My guest this week is editor-in-chief of DailyWire.com, editor-at-large of Breitbart.com, a syndicated columnist, a radio host, and a New York Times best-selling author. You want me to throw in anything else in there?
No, you got it. I think
you got a serious resume. I mean, I was doing some research on you. You pretty much do everything.
I fill my time.
Yeah, you keep busy.
It's a busy day, yeah.
All right, well, I'm very happy that you're here because I have had all of Twitter basically saying to me for about 6 months, you've got to talk to this guy. This is the guy who will either convert you to conservatism or you guys are just going to hate each other.
I'll turn you into a flaming Bernie Sanders socialist. Yeah, that's pretty much.
Pretty sure that's not the direction.
Good, so he'll be a conservative by the end of the conversation. So.
All right, well, let's see. Let's
solid
see.
Territory.
Yeah, let's see what happens. But a lot of people also said that even liberals that know of you said, I don't agree with this guy on a lot. Sometimes I don't even like him, but there's some principle based around what he does. So that's pretty much the spirit of what I do here. So that's why I wanted to have you on.
Well, thanks for having me. I got a lot of requests to come on your show, so I'm glad you invited me.
Yeah, all right. So let's get to it. So first off, you were actually born in L.A. and brought up in L.A. Mm-hmm. I thought there were no conservatives in L.A. What the hell are you doing here?
Yeah, so my parents were both, they voted for Carter in '76, and then they were Reagan Republicans. And then because we're Orthodox Jews, religious Jews tend to vote Republican and be culturally conservative, and so that's sort of the milieu in which I grew up. So, I became conservative basically from birth. I'm not a new convert.
Right.
You know?
So how is that growing up a conservative as a kid? Because what's that saying? You know, if you're not liberal in your 20s, you have no heart, and if you're not conservative in your 30s, you have no brain. Something like that.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
How is that as a kid?
I have no heart, so it works out beautifully.
Yeah. Well, how is that as a kid growing up? You're conservative as a kid. It just doesn't sound. It doesn't sound right somehow.
Well, again, growing up in a religious community is a little bit different than growing up in a non-religious community. Religious communities tend to be more conservative, and in LA, conservatism is all about social issues, right? When it comes to economics, there's kind of you'll see the people driving around in the Mercedes-Benz with the Bernie Sanders sticker, but everybody knows they're full of it. So
there's a lot of that in Beverly Hills right now.
Oh yeah, and it's like okay, you can just drive down to Cars for Kids any day now. Just give it away and enjoy yourself. Like I don't understand why you need my money. You clearly have some of your own, so anytime. Right. But in LA, it's all a cultural thing. I mean, conservative versus leftist, and I like to distinguish leftists from liberals because I don't think they're the same thing. Conservatives versus leftists in LA is very much about kind of a character assumption. If you're a leftist, you're a good person. If you're a conservative, that means you're an uptight John Lithgow type from Footloose. You don't want anybody to dance. That's what it comes down to.
Right. So I definitely want to dig into the difference between liberals and leftists with you because it's something you focused on a lot from the right, and it's something that I've focused on a lot in the last year from the left. So we're going to dive into that. But let's just do some election stuff.
Sure.
First, let's get the easy stuff out of the way.
That's fun stuff. All right.
Yeah. So this election seems completely insane to me. Let's start with Trump. You big on Trump? I don't think so.
No.
How are you feeling?
No,
about Trump?
I think Trump's a loudmouth. I think he's a braggart. I think that Trump is bad for American politics. I think that there's a couple of things that I like about Trump. One is that he says things that are not politically incorrect. The problem with Trump is that he fails to distinguish politically correct from just being a jackass. So there is a difference. I mean, there's a difference between being rude and being politically incorrect.
Right.
Right. Being rude is telling Megyn Kelly she's bleeding from her wherever. Being politically incorrect is saying that some immigrants who cross our southern border are criminals. That's politically incorrect, but it's not rude. But saying that Megyn Kelly is bleeding from her wherever, that's not politically incorrect. That's just being a jerk. So
is part of it that his...
But people mistake the two. So because the reign of political correctness is so strong, people have now interpreted being politically incorrect as just anything you say that pisses someone off. That means you're politically incorrect, and that's not what political incorrectness is.
Sure. So it's this conflation of just saying anything, and he's really good at that. I mean, I've noticed the more I watch him, it really, you can whittle him down to some pretty basic stuff because he just says a lot of circular logic stuff, and this person's great, and that person's great, and they love me, and they hate me, and that, and he was actually never really saying anything. Is that sort of the genius?
This is what I don't like about him, and it is the genius of him because we live in a me culture and a me time and a me media, and so Trump is all about Trump. I mean, that's really the only thing that matters to him. So if Vladimir Putin insults him tomorrow, that matters more than if Vladimir Putin invades a country.
Right.
Because all that matters is Trump. And so he speaks about himself in third person, and everything that he talks about is, I'm going to do this, I'm going to build a wall, I'm going to fix it, I'm going to make a great deal, I'm good for the blacks, I'm good for the Hispanics. nowhere in there do I hear, as a conservative, nowhere in there do I hear anything about what's the proper role of government in my life, which is the part that I care about, right? The part I don't care about Donald Trump.
Right.
I don't think he cares about me, and I don't think that we should care about each other.
Right.
I want him to leave me alone. I want Barack Obama. I want all these people to leave me alone so I can live my life.
So that's a conservative principle there. Just leave me alone.
Yes, just leave me alone. Like, the government was not meant to do this many things. End of story. I mean, read the Constitution is very explicit about the things government is supposed to do, and pretty much nothing on Trump's list, except for maybe border security, is really something the government ought to be doing. Again, what that comes down to, and this is the problem, is I think that the danger of Trump is that the left for 100 years has fallen in love with the idea of the strong man. I mean, you go all the way back to Woodrow Wilson, and Woodrow Wilson is writing about the president should be the strongest man possible. The only limits on his power should be his vision, basically, which, could come straight from Mussolini. And Woodrow Wilson was actually as close to a dictator as America has ever had. That's carried through to FDR, it's carried to LBJ, to Obama. On the right, at least they made overtures toward, we're not going to have the strong man who gets involved in your life and fixes all your problems. Trump is the strong man. And I think after so many years of a lot of Americans on the right feeling emasculated by President Obama telling them that they're racist, sexist, bigot, homophobes, and by Hillary Clinton telling them that they're too kind of testosterone-y in orientation toward the world, basically, I wrote this yesterday, I think that the response to Trump from the right has basically been he's the biggest swinging set of balls in the race, and because that's what he is, I'm for him. And you hear that from Trump supporters. Well, he'll do something. Maybe he will, I don't know.
Yeah.
Will it be good? That's sort of my question.
So as a conservative, though, as a true conservative, this must make you feel crazy, right? I mean, you must be really enraged at your own party because it's looking more and more every day like he's actually going to win this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who to be the most pissed at, honestly. I mean, you've got the GOP establishment, which cannot get off the Jeb Bush train for the life of them, and then just unify behind somebody like a Marco Rubio. And they hate Ted Cruz so much, they would side with Trump over Cruz, probably.
Right, so Cruz to them is too far right.
Right, Cruz, and they think he's unelectable, and more than that, Cruz actually, I think, believes the things they say they believe. So he says, I believe in a small government, I think that we should cut the government, I think the government shouldn't be important in people's lives. And the RNC, which makes its money off government being important to people's lives, I mean, how much money would you give to a political party if the government didn't matter in your life? Right? The RNC would raise $0 if no one cared what happened in Washington, D.C. And so Cruz scares them from that angle. I don't think Trump scares them. I think Trump annoys the establishment, but he doesn't scare the establishment. So I'm annoyed at the establishment. I'm annoyed at, Cruz is a very good constitutional conservative, but he's just he's not a great candidate by any stretch of the imagination. And then there are the Trump people who are so populist and in love with the feel of Trump that they forget that this guy could actually be president. Like, if he's president, what is that going to look like? So it's frustrating, definitely, all the way across the board. And I think maybe the most frustrating thing of all is that beating Trump is actually not that hard. Trump is a schoolyard bully, and somebody needs to just say to him, in the last debate, it was so clear, if you actually want to stop Trump, you can't do what Jeb did. Jeb stood there and he said, Donald, you're bullying people, and also stop being mean to my mother. Yeah. Really? I mean, all Trump is, if my thesis is correct, that basically Trump just represents the balls of American politics, then the only way to beat that is to kick him in the balls, right? I mean, figuratively speaking, that's the only way to do it. And
literally, it could work, too.
It might work literally. I mean, but the only way to really beat him is for somebody on the stage to say to him, Donald, you act like a big, tough guy. Your papa gave you $40 million to play with. Yeah. You've never had anyone say no to you in your entire life. You're a pathetic, weak specimen. Every time somebody ticks you off, you turn as red as the background on that stage the other night. I mean, he actually faded into the woodwork during that debate. Yeah. And if anybody on the stage really needs to shut the hell up and just listen for a second, it might be you, since you clearly know nothing about anything.
So what does that tell you about the rest of these guys that nobody does it? I get it. It's not in Jeb's character. Right. It's just not there.
I don't think it's in any of their character.
Yeah. I mean, so what does that say then about this group of people?
This is why they lose. I mean, it is in Obama's character. Obama would do it.
Yeah.
And I think it's actually in Hillary's character. I think that folks on the left understand that presidential politics is a knife fight, and people on the right are constantly engaged in this game where it's a discussion over policy. So Jeb Bush this morning, for example, he's talking about Trump, and he says something to the effect of, my goal as president of the United States is to grow our GDP from a 2% growth rate to a 4% growth rate. I thought, yeah, that's going to be Trump. That's a solid argument. Like, they don't understand that most politics it's unfortunate, this is the way it is. Most politics comes down to character arguments. once you get the character arguments off the table, then you can have a good policy argument. But most people on the left like to say to people on the right that you're just bad people. You're a racist, sexist, bigot, homophobe, so we shouldn't listen to you. And that's what Trump does so well. And so what you see on the right is, yeah, but you're not a conservative. That's an argument about policy. It's not an argument about character.
Right. So for a guy that obviously doesn't like Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton, do you at least envy the fact that in their debates, it seems to me, that it's much more substantive? There's at least, they're really saying, I'm the progressive. Now, you may hate all progressive ideas, but at least there's a, you got the D+ from the NRA and I got a C or whatever.
Well,
there's a little more of that.
So I think that they stay away from the character attacks, which I appreciate. That's good.
Yeah.
Although I think that, in Hillary's case, some character attacks would be necessary if Bernie actually would like to win and not just run a campaign. At some point, he's going to have to say, you're corrupt. Because that's
he's
actually,
sort of saying it, though, right?
Now, and it's a little late, right? I mean, and she, by the way, she's vicious. I mean, attacking him as a racist, I'll say a lot of bad things about Bernie Sanders, but calling Bernie Sanders a racist is absurd. And she's so set on, I have to win the ethnic minority vote, that I'll send out my surrogates like David Brock to suggest he doesn't care about black lives, which is absurd. I think that I'd like to see a little more character attacks on the left and between them anyway.
Right.
And as far as policy, I've watched a couple of their debates. I have yet to see a significant area of disagreement. I think they're just coming at it from, we agree on everything. It's just a question of how we talk about it.
Right.
So Bernie says, let's talk about it honestly, and Hillary says, let's lie about it a little bit so that people don't really figure out what we're up to, and then we'll do it, and it'll be too late.
Right. So I sense at least with them, there's a Hillary's trying to hit Bernie on this, that you're a big idea guy, but actually I can get some of this stuff done. Now, I don't know that the Republicans would be any more inclined to work with her than they would with...
I mean, they say that, but it's boring, right? Christie was saying that in every debate, right? You'd have Rubio and Cruz go at each other, and then there's Chris Christie doing the, well, I'm Josh Shucks, I'm just a governor. I don't understand what you're saying. What are you talking about?
You made him Southern.
Yeah, because it's a dumb thing to do. I mean, he sounds like he acts like a hick when he does that, Christie. Like, you're a governor of a major state. Acting like you don't know how the political game is played, or like you don't know what the Senate does. I just don't know what these people are arguing about over here.
They're just in meetings all day.
Right, exactly. Here I am, I do real things like hug Obama. Come on. So all of politics, everybody's playing politics right now at this level, and nobody's playing politics like where the real ideologies are, which is why I would like to see, what I would love to see, I think it would be good for the country, is a Sanders versus Cruz race. Right? That would actually be a fascinating race, because at that point, if Sanders can stay away from the whole you're a racist, sexist, bigot, homophobe thing, we could actually have a discussion about whether socialism is a good idea or a bad idea. Is income inequality something that we ought to worry about, or is it just ramifications of a free market system in which people make voluntary transactions happen? These would be interesting conversations, but we just don't get to them.
Right. So would the real battle of ideas, though, be if it was Sanders and had Rand Paul not dropped out?
There's a good case for that.
That would have been the real
I mean,
battle, right?
My problem with Rand Paul was always on foreign policy. I'm not an isolationist, and so Rand sort of is. But yeah, I mean, that too would be a battle of ideas that would be worthwhile.
Yeah, so the Republican Party in general, and I hear this a lot on the left, that it's this group of homophobes and racists and all this stuff. And I've been fighting against this. I've been fighting from the liberal side against the regressive left, the people that are on the far left to me. And I saw something interesting that you retweeted, and remind me who said this, but somebody made a point of saying that this morning, Nikki Haley, an Indian,
I think it was Guy Benson,
an American Indian, and Tim Scott, an African American, have both endorsed Marco Rubio, who is Latin. These are all Republicans.
Right.
So an Indian, a black person, and a Latino. And these are Republicans, and Tim Scott is a black Republican from the South. Somehow that messaging doesn't really make it through, does it?
Well, it doesn't, because they're not real black people or real Latinos or real foreign of foreign extraction. I mean, Nikki Haley was born here, but her parents are from India.
Isn't that the point? Isn't that the point of America? Right?
That's what I would think, right?
Yeah.
But we've broken down into this identity politics that really is quite sad and traps people in a group identity rather than you're an individual, go out and make something of yourself, go out and do something. This is a message that's not popular in certain quarters. When you say to people, look, your life is in your own hands, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that, which is you don't get to blame society for your problems. This is why I think that the Bernie Sanders argument, the Hillary Clinton argument is wrong. Bernie Sanders, every other tweet from Bernie Sanders is something like, we live in a world where there's massive income inequality, and we need to do something about that. And I think to myself, well, that's called a world of reality. I mean, every society in history has had income inequality, including communist ones, and you're not showing me a villain. Right? You're saying reality is bad. Blame society for all the problems. Show me an actual villain, and I'm happy to fight them. Show me some ghost villain, and I can't fight ghosts. I just can't.
Right. So when you hear that stuff, though, do you acknowledge at some level that there's some level of crony capitalism that keeps making the big companies bigger and crushing all of the small companies? And so I think he's talking to that point, but I guess he's not doing it in like a really direct.
Well, right. If you were attacking crony capitalism, he and the Tea Party are on the same page. Right? I mean, the problem with the Occupy Wall Street movement, which was supposedly ripping crony capitalism, is they were saying crony capitalism is bad, therefore the government should pick more companies to help, or should nationalize companies outright, which is not the solution, right? If you say crony capitalism is bad, first of all, I don't like the term crony capitalism because it's not capitalism, it's corporatism. Right? Capitalism is not, being a person who operates in business does not make you a capitalist. Business people take loans and subsidies from the government all the time. That's not a capitalist thing to do. Right? It's a self-interested thing to do. But self-interest and capitalism are not identical. If you wanted to actually fight crony capitalism, then cut off the tie between government and the private sector completely, which I would certainly prefer. Right. And this is part of the Republican Party that I dislike. I think there's a certainly corporatist side of the establishment Republican Party that is very much in favor of government involvement in the economy, and I don't like that in the slightest. But that's not Bernie's real critique. Because if it were a full free market system, if the government weren't reaching out to people, and by the way, the government, if you're going to argue against crony capitalism, you also have to argue against government subsidized loans for people who can't afford them for houses, right, which causes massive economic crashes, which Bernie apparently doesn't oppose, right? I mean, he would like more of those things. Right. He would like all of us to subsidize bad, folks with bad credit taking out loans. If you got rid of all those things, if you got rid of government involvement, Bernie Sanders would still think that something was wrong if Bill Gates is earning a lot of money and somebody at the bottom is earning none. Yeah. He sees somebody in a room with $5 and somebody with $1, and he immediately says the guy with $5 must have stolen something from the guy with $1. Whereas I say I have no evidence of that until you show me that evidence. Maybe the guy with $5 produced more than the guy with $1.
Right. So I'll follow you on that line of thinking. So then where do we get to a point where, like, to me, at some level, there should be some sort of progressive tax. It shouldn't be necessary. When they talk about the 1%, the studies are sort of all over the place. But it sounds like if you earn about $400,000 a year, you're in the 1%. I'm not in the 1%.
I am.
You're in the 1%?
Yeah, I am.
Good. All right, well, good.
But it took me a long time to get there.
Can I borrow some money?
No.
All right, there you go.
That's why I'm in the 1%.
There you go, because people in the 1% know how to take care of their money. But okay, so
By the way, I'm proud of that fact. I'm not gonna act like everybody acts ashamed about how much money they earn in this country. I think this is the only thing that's charming about Donald Trump, is that I think that you should be proud of how much money you earn in this country, because if you worked to get there, I mean, I spent a lot of money to go to law school, and then I spent a lot of time slogging in the trenches, and now I make a really good living. And I work a lot of hours to make that really good living. And my wife, we had to pay her entire medical education out of pocket, and she's going to be a doctor, and she's going to make a really good living. Yeah. Good for her. Good for me. Good for anybody who earns a living in this country. That's a good thing. Right. But as far as the progressive tax, no, I think the progressive tax is a bunch of crap. I think that
what about at some point? So you get to $10 million a year, that it could be progressively, going up a little bit. No. You just don't believe in that.
No. Because I don't see why you deserve a bigger percentage of my money because I make more money. Right. All taxes is a gangster shakedown. And so and that's all they are. And so we can all agree that some gangster shakedowns are worthwhile because we have to pay for police. But the idea that here's the problem with any sort of progressive tax. There are three, and this is just the general problem with progressive taxation. You have three people in a room. Two of them are not Bill Gates, and one of them is. They vote 2-1 that they should take half of Bill Gates' wealth. Okay, this is a simplified version of American politics. Yeah. Here's my basic rule for all legislation and all taxation. If you pass this law, are you willing to shoot the person who disobeys? Because that's what the government is. The government is just a big shooting people machine. Right? That's what the government does. In whether you're talking national defense or the police, there are certain laws where you pass them and you say, if you disobey this law, and if you resist me with a gun, I'm willing to shoot you. So what laws are you willing to shoot somebody over? This seems to me a pretty good measure of, am I willing? So, for example, for taxation, yes. So the question is, are you willing to shoot people who don't pay taxes if those taxes go for the national defense that protects us all? The answer is yes, because if nobody pays that tax, then presumably everybody dies in some sort of terrorist attack. But if you're going to ask me, are you willing to pay a progressive tax for whatever stupid government bull they're pushing today? And am I willing to shoot somebody over that? No, I think the purpose of the tax is just as important as the percentage of the tax.
So is that really the problem, that we have no idea at this point where our money goes?
Absolutely.
We just don't. Even now I'm hearing, Bernie will say, he talked to that guy at the town hall.
Yeah.
And the guy said, I earn $41,000 a year. And Bernie admitted, your taxes will go up. And then he explains, well, the health costs are going to go down or whatever, which may or may not.
Makes no sense. He says, I'm going to tax you $5,000 and you're going to get $10,000 back in medical service. What magical box did you make that happen in? Are there doctors in the back room there?
Well, that's funny. When he said that, I was thinking, well, if you're healthy,
if the government's that good at things, honestly, I wish leftist solutions work, because they're the easiest solutions in the world, right? It's a recession. Tax everybody at 100%, redistribute the wealth, in 2 days the recession's over.
Yeah.
They don't work. They're crap. By the way, they're also immoral. The left talks about these things as though it's moral. It's not moral to steal other people's wealth just because you're poorer than they are.